Hey there. Well, good morning, good evening, good night. I want to welcome you to another episode of First Light. I am your host, the only guy who gets up in my house. Well, no, Carrie's already up and working, but I mean, I'm the only guy who's in front of a screen at 6:30 in the morning in the house anyways, but trust you're doing well, and I always look forward to these gatherings, whether it is with you coming on now or coming on later. That's always cool. So as always, I want to encourage you to, once you join in, just feel free to say hi in the comment section. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's right now or tonight, tomorrow, even during the next session. Well, if you're trying to play catch up, I don't know. But I love the fact that people are watching this at different times of the day. It's part of the reason why I do it first light, because I don't want to miss the people that can join me right now and be part of this experience, but then others throughout the day. Even some people are like half an hour and they just say, and that's totally cool. Like, it's not like you have to get up earlier. You can start watching this at 7 or at 7:30, or maybe you want to hit this or hit the snooze less times and join me here at 6:30. Anyways, it's always good to be with you and be a part of this. So make sure you just say hi in the comment section, and feel free to kind of join in there as well. So today I want to ask a question before we get going into this. And the question you can put in the comment section is this: your favorite fruit. Write down your favorite fruit in the comment section, and if you want to even get extra points, because the points mean absolutely nothing, but if you want to get some extra points, you can argue whether you believe tomato really is a fruit. Okay, technically it is, so let's get that out of there. But come on, like, really, is tomato a fruit? You can throw that in the comment section there as well about that. But good morning, Anne. It's great to have you joining with us, and I have yet to go out that way. I am looking forward to it. We couldn't go last year because of the fires, but I cannot. I just can't wait to be able to go see that part of God's country. And then, Chuck, look at that! You bragging you were in Mexico last week. Well, buenos dias and dias de menega, and so. Donde está el baño? Which just, so I said hello. I said God bless you, and then where's the bathroom? That's pretty much all I know in Spanish. But anyways, it is good. Oh, nectarine. Nectarine. That's, you come in with the odd one there. That's an interesting one there, Chuck. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed your stay in Mexico, and we are all jealous, but that's okay. So I am excited to be able to show the mug of the day. So this is this is a one-off. This is a personalized gift that I got from a woman that I decided a long time ago, if I don't marry her, my life is going to be just a shambles. And so I have the one and only First Ave cork insulated coffee mug. This is cool. First Ave. I have a First Ave mug, and I have been waiting for this, and now I have something to have on the platform with me. And the problem is that it's so big now. People are like, "Oh my goodness! Like, really? Like, he's a dry preacher." But anyways, this is cool. So this is the first swig. You haven't even seen me. It is that is good. I'll tell you, First Ave, they make some good stuff. Maybe we should buy some of these and sell them in the cafe or something like that. Let me know if you think we should do something like that. But this is fantastic. Anyways, so there we are. First Ave, we are on the mark here, and I am really glad. I want to tell you, I'm excited about this series that we're going through in Mark. Oh, love the insights that you guys are coming up with, and just as I read it again, it's just really interesting to see. And I didn't mention this. I'll just say this because I haven't mentioned this in my sermons, that the cool thing about Mark is that I call Mark almost the run-on sentence gospel. It's like, and then he did this, and then he did this, and then he did this. And it's almost like you are tired just reading Mark, because it's like, wow, like so much happened. But I love it, and it was interesting. You're gonna find out in a few days. We're not quite there yet, but there's this funny. I remember I'll say this on Sunday in my message. I was kind of had this joke that dropped, by the way. It didn't go that well. But it was this joke between Mark and John in heaven, and they're just talking about the Gospels they wrote. And then as I was reading the end of Mark, I was like, that's so pretty funny about just kind of that interaction between how Mark talks about John in a certain light. Anyways, you can read that on your own. Yeah, I love that. Hey, Chuck, like immediately, like I just read that, like immediately he was healed, right? So it's just, it's such a good book. So I'm glad that we're going through this. And so Sunday's message, I just can't wait to get to Sunday and be able to do that. And Easter's just around the corner. Oh my goodness. So Easter and Good Friday and Easter are both at 10 a.m. And we're doing a mini series, and it's called Stations of the Cross and Stations of the Tomb. And all I'm going to say is this: I have to go to the post office today to pick up something in customs for that message. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm just so excited about that. Anyways, if I just talk about this, we're not going to be able to talk at all about what we came for. So let's take a moment here. Let's just pray, and then we'll jump right in. So God, I want to thank you for today. I want to thank you that you have given us this day, that everybody joining us online right now, as well as those who will join and participate later, God, it's showing that you've given us grace for another day. So I want to thank you for that. And I pray that we would use today effectively. We're starting off this way, but even still, to look at this day and say, God, how can we better the lives of those around us? And we ask this, Jesus, in your name. Amen. All right, so we are just finishing up kind of this first season. We've got a couple more weeks of this first season that we've been dealing with, been looking at this vision of ours to be pursuing the person and presence of God in us, through us, and around us. So over this since January, kind of looking at how God works in us. And so I'm just want to let you know, we're finishing up this one here. Then on next week, I'm really, really excited about next week, because next week it's going to be one of the most powerful expressions of love that are nonverbal. And I want to explain that. I'm looking forward to talking about that next week. And then 2 weeks later, that's the pièce de résistance, okay? That's the part that I just can't wait. It's going to be looking at, I believe you're going to look at your purpose in life differently, and I've been waiting for that to be able to share this publicly. So this is something that I have shared right from the get-go, even from when I was meeting with people, which, by the way, is almost the 2-year anniversary. Next week, it will be the 2-year anniversary that Jim Morrison, not the guitarist because he's dead, but Jim Morrison gives me a phone call and says, hey, I'm calling from Chilliwack, BC. And so anyways, but from that very time, I've been sharing with small groups this passage and how it is transforming the way I look at our purpose in life. And so I can't wait. That's in 2 weeks. But anyways, we can't get there until we get through this. So I had shared last week, we talked about this whole idea of the greenhouse effect. And it was really interesting, the conversations I had about that concept, just how God's word, and it just kind of percolates in us. And anyways, you have to watch it if you haven't watched it already. But so I had said that this week I was going to talk about an orchard, like how do you create an orchard? And as I was investigating and doing work on it, I was like, I could use that analogy, but I just felt like it wasn't really working. And so rather than me try to make something happen, I felt more, okay, God, what do you want to say? And so we're still on the same topic, still trying to deal with it, but I think that we're somewhere else we can deal with it better. And so I want you to understand that if you look at our lives as a church, and even as individuals, because the church is just a family of individuals, and so when you look at it there, we really kind of have 3 spheres of development. We've got this sphere of development of our relationships, so these relational developments. Then you've got a sphere of spiritual development, and then you got a sphere of what I call missional development, which is kind of like outreach. How does that go? So really, when you think about our lives, and even in the church, the programs and everything, it just kind of fits in one of those 3 areas. Do these things build relationship? Do they build our faith? Or do they build our ministry to one another and beyond? Okay, so all I was basically going to say about the orchard, so this is like the 4-second version of First Light, if it had been the orchard, is that trees need other trees to be able to multiply. That's kind of what I was going to say. Like, on the most part, yes, there's some self-pollinating trees, but on the most part, you really need other things involved. You need the bees, you need all that, the wind, all that to help with that sort of experience here. But what I wanted to deal with here is that I want to look at it, what I think Paul had a better analogy. So ideally, by saying Paul, I'm saying God. So I'd rather use God's analogy in this. And so it's found in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Now, when we start reading it, you may go, okay, I've heard these verses before. But I really think if we dial down and look at this from a different lens and think about it through a different perspective, it'll be very, I believe, very eye-opening on this thing as well. So anyways, here we go. It's going to be starting in verse 4, and we're just going to walk through this a little bit. But it says here in verse 4, now there are different gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different ministries, but the same Lord. And there are different activities, but the same God works all of them in each person. Okay, hold on. Ooh, did you hear that? All of them, so gifts, ministries, activities, all of them are not in the church, but are in each person. So I want you to catch this. Paul is not being poetic. There's not much poetry in what Paul has to say. He throws in a few creeds to kind of make it sound like he knows what he's like some sort of poet, but he's not. This isn't poetry. This is perspective. Okay, so I want you to hear that he's talking about gifts. Okay, the word for gifts is about favored grace. So it's that grace that's given to us that is favored. So it's not just imparted on him. No, it's a favored grace. And he says that the Spirit, catch this, think about this. So the Spirit gifts us, favored grace, gifts us differently. So each person has a different gift that is graced on them by the, catch it, Spirit. And then there's the ministries, okay, which could be translated active service. Actually, the word really is to wait on a table in the Greek, and I can say diakonoi only because it was used often. Diakonoi, okay, so where you get the word deacon, okay, so diakonoi. So these people waiting on tables, okay, so this active service, okay, ministries, it comes from the Lord. So there is the Spirit that's doing the gifts, there's the ministries that's coming from the Lord, and then catch this, the activities, which really it wouldn't make sense if it was in English, the energizings. That's what he says, the energizings, okay? Those things that kind of get you going, the energizings. God, okay, uses these situations to build each person up. So notice this. You've got gifts, you've got ministries, you've got activities you've got the Holy Spirit, and you've got God, and you've got Jesus, the Lord. Okay, so what Paul is saying, if you want to talk about some sort of poetry, it's not poetry as much as like just parallel that the body is a community, and the ministry of the body, which is the gifts, the ministries, the activities, is also facilitated by a community, by the Trinity, by the Godhead of the Son, the Spirit, and the Father working in tandem, which I think is really this cool correlation. So just, we're just like, what? That's 2 verses, and it's already like, okay, I could just sign off here, okay? So like, that's really cool here. Okay, let's keep going, because we've got 18 minutes to go. And so I want to make sure I get there. So then there says in verse 7, a manifestation of the Spirit is given to each person for the common good. Catch this again. So everything that God does in your life is to bless you, but also to bless others. It's for the common good, okay? And it goes on to say that in verse 11, it says, one and the same Spirit is active in all these, distributing to each person as he wills. So if you want to put this in the chat room, I'd love for you to put this in the chat room, because this is a key point. Each person is blessed in order to bless others. I'm going to say that again. Each person is blessed in order to bless others. You know, there was that whole hashtag blessed kind of thing that was a number of years ago on Instagram and on, everywhere. Hashtag blessed. Really, that's half of it. We aren't blessed to just say, oh, great. No, hashtag blessed, really, it's hashtag blessed others or bless others. Like, really, you shouldn't consider it because we're not the end of the line. God has done all of this thing for it to go somewhere else. God is self-sufficient. God is totally contained himself. He doesn't need anything else. And yet, he decided to create in order to bless. So even in the Godhead, we see this idea that even though there's self-sufficiency, that there is this desire outside of that self-sufficiency to bless others. And we're made in his image. So yeah, we want to make sure that we're taken care of, but we shouldn't think of ourselves as being taken care of just solely. It really needs to move on. Okay, so do I. Okay, anyways, let's go like this. And the last thing I want to say here is that it's true that we're blessed to bless others, but each person is blessed differently to bless others differently. Okay, so I'm looking in this room, Chuck, Linda, looking at others that are in this room as well here as I go down, and others, and some people that aren't talking yet, but that's fine. But each one of you are different for a reason, and so you have passions, you have desires, you have giftings, and so I would hate for you to think that you don't have a place because you're not like somebody else. No, you have a place. Every person has a place because they're going to bless people differently, and this is where it's going to come into light on this first light. In verse 12, it says this: but just as the body is one and has many parts, okay, catch that, and all of the parts of that body, though many, are one body, so also is Christ. Indeed, verse 14 says, the body is not one part, but many, okay? And this is what I want to get at here. There's a huge difference between unity and uniformity. Okay? I'm going to say that again. There's a huge difference between unity and uniformity. And the reason why that is because when it comes to unity, unity is when all parts combine with each other. Okay? So it's when all parts combine with each other, okay? Uniformity is when all the parts conform to each other. You notice that? Unity is when all the parts combine with each other. So like it's these puzzle pieces things and all kind of work themselves together. But uniformity is when all of the parts conform to each other. So what happens is that you deviate from who God has created you to be, to try to align yourself to be like somebody else that maybe has more prominence, or maybe he has this, or maybe has that. And boy, this is sometimes when I say I should just stick to my notes. But I talk to people often when it comes to my education in Bible college and my degree in theology and stuff, and adolescent psychology and stuff. But I talk about this, that when it goes to Bible college, that there are some people that you can, I don't want to say you can tell because that's pretty judgmental, but it seems as though that them going, they've gone there because they've seen how their pastor was revered, or their pastor was elevated, or whatever. And so you see almost like you're not being you. You're trying to be somebody else. But it's because they were grabbing at something that they're not, because they liked what they saw in how those people were revered and how those people were lifted up. And this is where Paul circles back and he's like, you guys are putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Okay, you're doing this thing backwards. You're looking at this thing wrong, okay? And this is where he talks about this in verse 15. He says this. He says, if the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a deacon. I'm not a teacher, or I'm not on the platform singing. If the foot should say, I'm not a hand, I don't belong to the body. It is not for that reason any less part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I don't belong to the body, it is not for that reason any less part of the body. So if you want, don't have to put in the notes, but you can just, if you take your own personal notes, make sure you understand this. In verse 15 and 16, what Paul is talking about is a distorted status, okay? He's pointing out that they have a distorted status. Because I'm not Linda, I'm not a part of the body. Because I'm not cool like Chuck, then I am not part of the body. You know, like whoever, you know, all of you joining right now, like that's where this mentality can get wrong. Paul is saying that's a distorted view of your status, okay? And he goes on in verse 17 to say this: if the whole body were an eye, uniformity, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? Okay? So in those first two verses, there was this distorted status. Now, what Paul is talking about is a distorted significance. Okay? Distorted status. Now, because of that uniformity malaise, okay, is now it is this issue where there's this distorted significance when it comes to each part of the body, okay? And then he says this, oh man, underline this in your Bible, okay? This is maybe put in the chat room, read verse 18, you know, or something like that. It says, but as it is, God has arranged each one of the parts in the body just as he wanted. Okay? I'm going to say that again. God has arranged each one of the parts in the body just as he wanted. Okay? One of these days I'm going to do a message or a series called But God. But anyways, so you just, when I do it, there's a lot of verses where you see that, and it's just like that's really inspiring there. But this is what I love about looking at this, is that he arranged them. Okay, he arranged them. I'm looking at the time. I may circle back on that because I don't want to go over. I respect your time, but I may come back because there's something else I want to say about that. So let me put this into an illustration here. I'm just going to take another sip of my first half mug. Okay. All right, awesome. So a number of years ago, Carrie and I, we lived in Alberta in Edmonton. And so Edmonton had a fairly large church. I was the music director there. And we did this singing Christmas tree. 18,000 people came and saw it. I had 450 volunteers. I was 25 years old, 450 volunteers under me. And I had 120 voice choir, 40-piece orchestra. We brought in half of our orchestra was paid by, they were the ESO, the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. So it was awesome. You know, I'm 25 years old. I'm writing this play and putting this whole thing together, and it was so cool. And hearing this orchestra, wow, it was such a thrill, a highlight of my life. And so I had all of these different musicians playing their parts, even the vocals, and it was like I had to practice how I was conducting because you had to point at certain things and all that. But my score was all it was like this. Oh, you can't even see that. Okay, so it's like this, but imagine like you can't even see it. So it's this on this table, this score, and it's every part, flute, everything, vocals, whatever. Every page was everything on it, and I had a different score than the rest of the group. Everybody didn't have that score. They had their individual parts. So for some people, they may just see this big, like, okay, you'd see these little dashes, which basically means, you know, go outside and drink your Coke or something like that. Like, it just basically says you're not doing anything. But then all of a sudden there'd be places where there's notes. So you may be in a song and there's hardly anything at all, right? If you're the xylophone player, you may not be playing that much, but you look at like other people, they're playing a lot. Well, I want to be the first chair violinist, right? Because they're always playing. They seem to be always playing. And then there's the brass section. Well, they just want to tell everybody they're there. You know, they're just so loud. So you could look at your own score and feel like you're not significant in the big picture of things. Here's the problem. We are in the same. God has the big score. We've just got our own score. Our problem is that we try to keep score with the wrong score. We try to compare ourselves to others. We try to see where we are in the body because we're looking at our score instead of trusting the score, the one that God has. So if we look at our score and say, well, we don't really have much to do, here's the problem. When it comes to that xylophone part, if the xylophone part's just like, I just got a little bit to do, I'm just going to go outside. And then all of a sudden, da-da-da, and then silence. You have ripped the score's intention apart because you're not doing your part in it. Okay, so I think you're getting it. I don't want to belabor this thing and pound it like a kettle drum. Okay, maybe I'm going to try and find some more. You guys maybe fill the chat room with just some ugly puns and cheesy sayings. Just kind of a line. Find a musical way to just kind of make that point here. Okay, because part of the problem is that when we are only looking at our score, we're not listening to the rest of the orchestra to understand where we actually fit into the music. And if we were to consider it that way, then all of a sudden it's like, I've got my part, which I have to say as a conductor is awesome. When you're able to hear every part come together, you have your rehearsals and all that, but then when it's just beautiful when it all comes together. Okay, I want to keep going here. Okay, verse 19 says this. And if they were all the same part, where would the body be? Okay, as there are many parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. Which, by the way, I want to say, if your hand is in your eye, you're either putting in your contacts or your eye's not going to like it. Okay, so anyways, so the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. Or again, the head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. Put this in the chat room. This is important. Being different should never then justify being indifferent. I'm going to say that again. Being different should never justify then being indifferent. So just because somebody's not like you does not mean you should think that person doesn't have significance. Absolutely they do. I look at every person in our church, they have significance. Are they utilizing it? Are they being blessed to bless others? That's up to them and God. But I'm telling you that each person has their part to play. So we should not be indifferent towards them just because they are different than us. Okay, verse 22 says this. On the contrary, flip the tables, he's saying, those parts of the body that are weaker are indispensable. Okay? And those parts of the body that we consider less honorable, we clothe these with greater honor, and our unrespectable parts are treated with greater respect, which our respectable parts do not need. Okay, I don't want to belabor it because we're kind of sick of COVID. But here's what I'm going to get at. Spanish flu 1918 wiped out, 5% of the population? Then we understood biology, somewhere in the 60s, probably, maybe a little earlier, we started figuring all that stuff out. Now, yeah, I think we were getting it, but we really didn't start getting headway until the 60s. So with COVID, would we be where we are right now with even though there's still a death rate, would we be at the same death rate had we not known biology, washing hands? I'm not going to get into vaccines and all that. That's just going to cause a big but just the idea of we should be washing our hands, we should be keeping distance, the idea of spreading germs this way, right? So all of a sudden COVID has brought us, the significance is the tiniest thing here, to the point where I did this research because they didn't teach me this in Bible college, that when you look at blood cells, okay, red blood cells last about 120 days, up to 120 days, which I think is pretty cool, okay? White blood cells, though, they only last 14 to 20. They don't last more than 20 days, right? So it's because one gives life and the other one protects it. They both have a purpose. If the red blood cells said, we last longer, so I don't even know why you're here, the red blood cells wouldn't last because it's the white blood cells keeping the red blood cells alive. So what Paul's saying here is that just because it's on the big, I've got red hair, I got all like what you see on the outside. No, 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 no. It's all the little things. It's all the tiny little things that may seem insignificant. They're actually keeping this thing going. And I want to say that. I want to say that about the church. It is not just the people that you see. It is the tons of people at First Ave that you don't see that are making this thing work, making our church work, working behind the scenes, making it all happen, okay? I want to stay tuned on that because I'm going to circle back on that. Instead, God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the less honorable, so that there would be no division in the body, that there would be no indifference, okay? But that the members would have the same concern for each other. I am blessed to bless others, okay? So if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. You get the flu, all you got is a virus, but your whole body knows it, okay? You're aching, you're pain, you have a fever, all that, your white blood cells are like, attack, right? That's like what they're doing, right? So you all know it. So if one part suffers, you're all suffering, okay? And then verse 27, he finishes with, now you are the body of Christ and individual members, parts, okay, of it, okay? Let me close with this. Want to have a first step. Okay, last week we had the first step and that was to do some reading. So maybe the second step is put in the chat room how that went, like that little reading every day. But today's first step is this is what I want you to do. I want you to look for and celebrate the small contributions of others. Okay, look and see the small things, the things that no one else notices. And I want you to celebrate it, not like a big parade, but I want you to like go up to the person, thank the thankless jobs. Okay, thank those things that are seeming insignificant. Do me a favor, this week, let's do this as an exercise. This is the first step. Start looking for those things, recognize them, and genuinely appreciate it. And then do 2 observations. How does it affect them? Okay, gauge their response. How does it affect them? And then a 2-part, how does it affect you? So first off, how does it affect you as a part, like what it did for you? And then how does it affect you as the whole? Like how does it make you think about the whole church and how that's all going to break down? Anyways, that's today's message. I wanted to encourage you as part of the body on that. Can't wait to see you on Sunday. And we are going to get in our last session of On the Mark. We finish the Bible readings on Sunday morning, and then we're kind of heading on this huge trajectory towards Easter. Can't wait to see you. God bless you. Thanks for joining with me this morning, and I hope you have a fantastic day looking for ways to bless those around you. God bless you.